Hello, Gemini friends. Up today is your October 2025 Vedic Astrology Forecast plus bonus tarot reading. We'll see what Exalted Jupiter brings you this month, and we're going to look at the October 6th full moon and October 20th new moon to give you a feeling for the whole month of October and how that's going to affect you, Gemini. If you're new here, welcome to Anastasia Tarot and Vedic Astrology channel, where I help you navigate the cosmic currents and surf the planetary wavelengths with ease and grace. So now let's get into Gemini Vedic Astrology and Tarot for October 2025. Chapters are time-stamped in the description below. As always with collective readings, results are going to depend on your personal chart, so take what aligns and leave the rest behind. This October 2025 Vedic Astrology horoscope is for Gemini rising, Gemini moon, and Gemini sun signs as per your Vedic sidereal astrology chart. Okay, Gemini, let's get into reading your charts for October 2025. So we're starting out looking at the full moon chart for October 6th to give us an idea of the beginning of the month. And as you can see, Gemini, beginning the month with lovely benefic Jupiter in your first house. And this is quite nice. It supports the general vitality and just your general luck factor. And, you know, if you have been struggling with health issues, this first house Jupiter is definitely going to increase your vitality and can make you feel better than you have been. And Jupiter is going to move around the middle of the month. We'll get into that when we look at the new moon charts. But for this first part of October, you're continuing to enjoy the blessings of benefic Jupiter in your first house. Now, getting into the full moon itself, this full moon is happening in your 10th house. You can see that moon is with retrograde Saturn in your 10th house. And now, what is the full moon? It invites us and supports us to release whatever it is that has come to completion and you want to release over the next 2 weeks. This full moon is definitely the time for whatever spiritual practices you do, meditation, things of that nature. And because it's happening with Saturn in your 10th house, good time to release things that may no longer be working with your career. We've talked about this 10th house career activation with Saturn in your 10th house. And, you know, Saturn retrograde, it's going to be retrograde for the rest of October and going into November. So you may have been doing, you know, a lot of do-overs or revisiting past, you know, projects or whatnot with your career. So this full moon is a wonderful time to tune into that energy of what are you releasing in your career that no longer works for you. I'm just going to real quick share a personal story, Gemini, because I am a Gemini rising myself. And I recorded several of these videos, including yours, trusting the information that was in an astrology app in my phone. And then when I really verified that information, oh my God, it was wrong. And I had to redo some of these videos. So this is a real example of this Saturn 10th house retrograde. It can be a little bit frustrating, right? Having to redo some of your work. On the other hand, I really welcomed that I learned a lesson about not being so blind in my trust of apps and AI. And you know, Gemini, we like communications, we like tech, we like to embrace the newest, latest tech. But this was really an important lesson for me about being a little old school. So actually, to make all these videos, I went back and did it old school and really made sure to manually verify that the moon is at 19 degrees, the sun is at 19 degrees. Yes, this is truly the chart for the full moon, which is created when moon and sun are exact opposition. So just a little story. I didn't mean to get long-winded, but just a little story there, that this full moon in Saturn can actually be a really fruitful time of letting go of things that don't work in your career life. Revati Nakshatra, where the moon is for this full moon, is a Mercury-ruled nakshatra. So again, Revati also being ruled by Mercury, it's going to give a nice vibe for your full moon meditation or practice of releasing what it is in your career that no longer works for you. Now, the other thing you've got going on, Gemini, your Lagna Lord, Mercury, is in Libra in the 5th house. And this is just a lovely placement for your Lagna Lord. Kind of like this Jupiter in your 1st house elevates your chart, gives a feel-good factor. Mercury, your Lagna Lord, being in the 5th house, again, that's just kind of elevating the chart. 5th house, what is 5th house? That is creativity, children, luck, and speculation. So as you can see, it's really nice to have your Lagna Lord there. However, Mercury is with Mars, and these guys are a little bit uneasy roommates, right? They're both living in the same house at the moment. And Mercury, of course, Gemini, that's your Lagna Lord. It's the planet of communication, negotiation. And Mars is the warrior planet. So this is somewhat uneasy. Now, on the plus side, this Mars in the 5th house is going to bring, for Gemini creatives, this is going to fire up and inspire your creativity, your creative vision, and your motivation for creation. So that 5th house activation with energetic Mars is really quite nice. 5th house also rules children. So for Geminis that have kids, with this Mars in the 5th house, you want to watch out. There may be, temper, anger, irritation, things of that nature, with your kids acting up. And of course, you might be saying, well, when are my kids not acting up? But just be aware with Mars in this 5th house of children, that might be a thing. So as much as possible, play it cool, understand that's just your Mars in your house of children and it will pass. Now, the other thing we've got going on, this is a little subtle, Gemini. Your Lagna Lord, Mercury, is in Chitra Nakshatra, which is a Mars-ruled nakshatra. So, Gemini, this is a time to subtly integrate this Mars qualities. This is all happening in Libra, which is the sign of balance and harmony. And so with your Lagna Lord being in a Mars-ruled nakshatra and for the moment, your planet is roommates with Mars. So Gemini, this can be a good time to set boundaries. And again, Libra is really going to encourage us to do this in a loving and tactful way. But the boundaries, again, it could be with 5th house, the boundaries could have to do with your children, And with creativity, the boundaries could have to do with, setting boundaries around time. Like, right, maybe you have to protect your time for your creative projects and your creativity. This is going to be different for every Gemini. You've all got different lives and, different life situations. But this subtle Mars influence from Chitra Nakshatra and also from being with Mars, definitely a time, Gemini, to integrate this warrior Mars energy into your common consciousness. Now, Sun is in 4th house Virgo, so this is putting your attention on your home. And for Geminis that work at home, this could be quite nice, this Sun activation in the 4th house. Now, 4th house is catching this drishti, this aspect from Saturn. So you could feel, some sense of burden, limitation, more work around the house. And then again, for Geminis that work at home, we've already discussed this, Saturn retrograde kind of, redoing some of your work. And that's just going to intensify by having that aspect over your 4th house. Now, with Venus and Ketu are tightly conjunct for most of October. You can see Venus is at 27 degrees Leo, Ketu is at 24 degrees Leo. So, it's not an exact perfect conjunction, but they are still very close. So this is, in this 3rd house of communication, motivation, neighbors, and siblings. So having Venus in Leo in your 3rd house, your communication and your charisma get elevated from that. Venus likes being in Leo for, raising the charisma, and 3rd house is about communication. So that's quite nice. Now, Ketu is a disruptor. So you never really know what's going to happen with Ketu in a house. The Venus-Ketu conjunction, though, this can really encourage us toward this unconditional higher love and expressing that in day-to-day communication. Because 3rd house very much rules your sort of day-to-day communication, not deep, profound, life-changing conversations, but your day-to-day communication, especially like with neighbors, for example, hi, how are you, making shopping lists, running errands, this sort of day-to-day thing. And while Ketu as a malefic disruptor can cause some disruptions with that, hopefully, Gemini, you're not having any, problems or disruptions with neighbors or siblings, especially younger siblings. Ketu can often do that in the 3rd house. However, this Venus is really bringing out the good aspects, because Venus is such a benefic planet and Ketu does well in Leo. So this can be a time, Gemini, where you're actually bringing in some of this spiritual unconditional love into your day-to-day communications with neighbors and siblings and whatnot. So really, this can be quite lovely, this Venus and Ketu in the 3rd house. And it's going to help you deal with any of these Ketu disruptions in a more loving and spiritual way. Now, we're just going to fast forward a couple of days because I want to show you this Parivartana Yoga that's going to start to take effect on October 8th, but I am going to go to October 9th just to be on the safe side. So by October 8th or 9th, again, it may depend exactly where your location is, we can see that Mercury is in Libra still, but Venus has passed into Virgo. Now, Venus is normally not particularly happy in Virgo. That's her detriment sign. So, Venus is not happy in Virgo. But this Parivartana Yoga, which is in effect from October 8th through the 24th, cancels some of that debilitation. And it's really lovely because, right, Venus is in Mercury's sign. Virgo rules Mercury, and Mercury is in Venus's sign. Venus rules Libra. So this exchange between Mercury and Venus, not only does it cancel some of the effects of Venus debilitation, but it activates this nice exchange, Gemini, between your fourth and fifth house. You can see you've got Sun and Venus together in the fourth house, which is a really nice activation for your fourth house. That's going to be beginning around the middle of October. And then your fifth house continues to be activated in the way we just talked about. So this can work quite nicely for your home life and your creative life. And then, if you have kids, of course, kids living with you at home, your near and dear ones, Venus adds some grace. Again, if they're acting up with this Mars, Venus and Sun in the fourth house are really going to kind of calm that down a little bit. And this Parivartana Yoga really just elevates your communication by having your Lagna Lord involved in Parivartana with Venus. That's quite nice for you, Gemini. Your powers of charisma, persuasion, communication, all that gets an elevation from this lovely Parivartana Yoga. Okay, so now we're going to fast forward to October 21st, actually, to get a look at the new moon and the latter part of October. All right, Gemini, so we are looking at the new moon, which is October 21st, and you may have noticed I was talking about the new moon being on October 20th, and this was part of my lovely 10th house Saturn retrograde do-overs when I manually input the data. And as you can see here, we have Sun is at 4 degrees Libra, Moon is also at 4 degrees Libra. So when I manually verify and manually input exactly when is the exact new moon moment, it is in fact on October 21st. Here in California, again, things may change slightly depending on your location in the world, India, Europe, Africa, Australia, but this is what it is in Ventura, California, United States, and it's going to be pretty similar wherever you are. So this is big fifth house activation for you, Gemini. This is really nice for what is the new moon, right? The new moon is in our spiritual practice. That's the time when we plant the seeds that we want to see grow for the next 2 weeks. And with all of this fifth house activation, you have got Sun is in Libra, Moon is in Libra, Mars, and your Lagna Lord Mercury are all in fifth house Libra. Fifth house is a lucky house, so that's a great house to have activated in your chart, is to have this lucky trine fifth house. And because this is the house of creativity, children, speculation, if you want to think about planting seeds for a creative project, for Geminis with kids, you may want to plant some seeds maybe for, better communication with your children, better relationship with your children. For Gemini creatives, definitely a wonderful new moon to plant the seeds for the blossoming of your creative projects, especially with, Saturn in the 10th house. that is supporting your professional life. So this can be a really, really nice nice new moon to plant the seeds for creativity and your relationship with your children. Now, depending on your personal chart, let's look up here. Jupiter has moved from your first house into your second house of finances. This is still quite nice for you, Gemini. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. This happens every 12 years. So Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, and it's benefic, and it's in your second house of finances. Your fifth house of luck and speculation is super lit up. So this can be, for some Geminis, it can be a good time for investments, financial investments, things of that nature. With Venus in the fourth house, depending on your lifestyle and your business, it could support, real estate investment, things of that nature. Again, this is a collective reading, so this is not going to apply to all Geminis. Just something to look at if that's already part of your, your lifestyle and your plans, and, your financial advisor, and and you see the indications in your personal chart. This can be some support for financial gain with this benefic Jupiter exalted in your second house of finances, and then your fifth house of luck being all lit up, and your fourth house of home being activated by Venus. This Parivartana yoga we talked about is continuing. Venus is still in Virgo, and Mercury is still in Libra. So again, this continues this theme of activating the fourth house of home, mother, and vehicles, and the fifth house of creativity and children. And with Venus in the fourth house, Gemini, if your mom is still with us, this could give nice relations with your mom, or, if you have troubled relationships with your mom, this Venus in the fourth house, it could offer some support to smooth things over, resolve some things with your mom. And really, this fourth and fifth house activation, for your near and dear ones who you share your home with, whether that's your mom, your children, whatever, this can be really lovely activation. And, again, Mars could be in there causing some problems, especially a date to watch out for with Mars is October 20th to the 23rd. There is a Rudra Yoga. So if Mars is going to activate any anger issues, just watch out for the 20th to the 23rd. But really, there's so much good vibes going on. Mars is not going to cause that much problems for you. There's really just a lot of good vibes going on for you, Gemini. So just, be mindful on the, 20th to 23rd. But otherwise, and this, Rahu Ketu in your 3-9 axis, Ketu in the third house of lower mind and, day-to-day communications. We already talked about that. Rahu continues in your 9th house, religion, philosophy. So Gemini, this is, you have two of your trine houses. The fifth house is super activated by Sun and, Sun, Mars, Mercury, and your 9th house is activated by Rahu. So this can be a time, Gemini, where you're starting to think a little deeper. Gemini sort of has a reputation of being kind of, let's face it, at times, sort of shallow or a dilettante. But with Mars in your 9th house, Gemini, you are getting some support to think a little deeper about things, and maybe even have some deeper experiences with your meditation. All in all, October is shaping up to be good month for you, again, with, exalted Jupiter in your second house of finances and this Parivartana Yoga, at least up through, up through October 24th, from the 8th to the 24th, making this just really pleasant activation of the 4th and 5th house. So Gemini, that is your astrology for October 2025. And now we'll get into the tarot reading. Okay, Gemini, welcome to your tarot reading for October 2025. I'm going to pull 3 cards for you and let's get into it. Okay, Gemini, so first card to come up is this 5 of Swords. So you could be beginning the month with some conflict going on, some mental conflict. However, this is followed by the Ace of Coins and the Sun. So October is shaping up nicely for you, Gemini. So again, in the beginning of the month, it might be conflicts with other people. For some Geminis, it could be conflicts with other people. For other Geminis, especially, Gemini creatives, you could have a sort of internal conflict going on, right? What are swords? Swords are the mind. And it could be that you've, got these different ideas, creative ideas. It could very much have to do with work. Remember we've talked about that Saturn retrograde in your 10th house. So there could be some mental conflict going on about, how are you structuring your creative projects? How are you structuring your work life? And 5 in Pythagorean numerology is a marriage card. So there's this process, right, where you're going through this mental conflict and searching for a way to marry some disparate ideas. And find a fusion there and a working combination of some different things that they start out being in conflict. But then the energy moves into this lovely Ace of Coins. So Gemini, I know with, that Saturn in the 10th house, your career progress, yes, it's progressing, but it may feel like it's progressing really slowly and there's a lot of do-overs. But you have, especially toward the end of the month, you have all that lovely 5th house activation, Gemini. And so look for new money coming in. And, you've got Jupiter in your 2nd house. So this Ace of Pentacles is really reinforcing that, Gemini. October should see some new money coming in for you, so, and our final card is the Sun. And again, really lovely, lovely card. For some Geminis, the Sun can have to do with contracts, signing contracts, things of that nature. So for some Geminis, this new money coming in, it could actually result in a contract being signed. And, for some Geminis, it's going to be this trajectory, right? You're going through negotiation, negotiating the contract. And then an agreement is worked and it's going to bring in some new money. And, with this Sun, this is a contract in place. So obviously that's not all Geminis, but for some Geminis, these cards may play out that way. And just speaking in a more general way for Gemini creatives, with this Sun going on, your creative work is going to start to bear fruit. And also just, in your home life, again, there could be, some conflicts or difficulties around the house. And then, whether, new money comes in and solves the problem, but there is, a real shift moving from, conflict to a really lovely resolution. Now, Gemini, getting into your numerology, we have 5 plus 1 is 6, plus 19 is going to be 25. 2 and 5 is 7. So 7 is the Chariot in the Triomphe, the major arcana of the Tarot. So Gemini, this message from the number 7, from the Chariot, is very much keep on your path. Don't let any sort of petty conflicts deviate you from your path. You're in your chariot, driving for the sun and, aiming for the sun. So Gemini, this is really a time to, if you don't have, if your vision is not solidified and you have some conflicting ideas, sit with that, meditate with that, find the place where things come together, and then, just proceed in your chariot toward that goal of the sun. Okay, Gemini, that was your tarot reading for October 2025. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. This is a tiny channel and every little bit helps it grow. Gemini, wishing you the blessings of good health, peace, and prosperity in October 2025. Namaste.